Good afternoon and welcome to the Live with Sales Leaders event where we're bringing you sales thought leadership from industry experts all over the world. My name is Paul Robb. I'm an enterprise sales manager for UK and Ireland for LinkedIn Sales Solutions, and I'll be the host for today's episode. Today's episode is all about cold calling. I'm pretty sure everyone on this call has had the experience of receiving a cold call and of someone using it as an information dump, not providing any real value, and then not taking no for an answer or making an ask you weren't ready for. I would say that's how many of us feel about it, and the data backs it up, with 90% of C-suite execs saying they don't respond to impersonal outreach. And even when it does work, the practice can risk alienating many future prospects. That's why we're here today to discuss the warm call. It's not a phone call necessarily, but a term that means informed sales outreach. It could be a call, an email, in-mail, or even a text. The difference is this time, the term means that it basically means informed sales outreach. It could be a call, it could be an email, or it could be a text, as we said. So let's find out what's working in prospecting, what's not, and how technology can help sellers out. Before we get started, I wanted to highlight a couple of housekeeping details. A recording of the show will be available on the LinkedIn Sales Solution page after the show. You can also follow the conversation on our social channels using the hashtag #LiveWithSalesLeaders. So without further ado, let me hand you over to my amazing panel to introduce themselves. And as many of you will know by now, we like to kick off a meeting in LinkedIn with a little icebreaker. So I'm going to ask our guests to introduce themselves and also tell us something that's not on their LinkedIn profile. So I'll hand over right now to Julie Thomas. Julie, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. And I will say good morning because I'm located in California today in the United States. And I'm thrilled to be here. My name is Julie Thomas. I'm the president and CEO of Value Selling Associates. Value Selling Associates is a business-to-business sales methodology firm, and we partner with our clients to help them improve and optimize sales productivity across all aspects of sales and the revenue funnel. So from cold calling and prospecting through large account management and customer success, we partner with our clients in that. Something that's not on my LinkedIn profile is I have 2 teenagers. Actually, they're no longer teenagers. They're in their 20s. They're both at university, and my daughter's about to graduate. So I'm in the process of planning her little graduation soiree, and I love to cook and entertain. With that, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Julie. Really appreciate that. And let me introduce my next guest, Alex Blauber. Alex, over to you.
Thank you very much, Paul. My name is Alex Blauber. I'm based out of the Netherlands. I work for Philips, and as in my role as social selling specialist, it's my focus to really help all of our global sales teams to embrace the potentials of social. Of course, with the aim to increase our funnel and increase our order intake. The one thing that it's not on my LinkedIn profile is that I am confident to say that I easily spend 3, maybe even 4 hours a day on socials. Some people call it a waste of time, but I really am up to date with everything there.
Alex, thank you so much for that. For those of you that have tuned in, I'm hoping to hear from Natasha Villaseca. Unfortunately, Natasha's unable to join us today. She's unwell, but get well soon, Natasha. Hopefully, you'll be able to join us on one of the Live with Sales Leaders calls in the future. Right, so let's kick off the first question. So, Julie, I'll come to you first, if that's okay. Julie, in your experience, what sales outreach methods are working right now?
Well, it's interesting. I think a couple things that are working well right now is certainly understanding, doing better research to understand who you're targeting. It's amazing to me how many cold outreaches I receive, and I receive a ton every day, that don't even appear to know what business I'm in or what role I have. the name of my company is Value Selling Associates, but years ago we called it Value Vision Associates. I changed the name a couple of years ago. And one of the reasons I changed the name was I was getting a ton of outreach, cold outreach, for a company called Value Vision that sold eyeglassware in the southeast of the United States. And it was just amazing to me that people would find my phone number, find my name, find my company name, and then not even spend a nanosecond trying to figure out what I did and who I served in the marketplace. And people were cold calling me about eyeglasses. So I think that is still a big challenge that people have. And so the successful outreach are those who do a little bit of research and can demonstrate the person that they're trying to contact, that they know them, they understand them, and they've done their homework to predict as best they can what might be of interest to that individual.
Cool. And Julie, do you think therefore that cold calling is obsolete these days, or do you think it still has a place?
I definitely think it still has a place. We still have to find ways to engage potential buyers and add value to them. And we tend to call that cold calling or prospecting. And there's a number of tactics and techniques I think that we can talk about that makes that more effective, but we can't afford to just sit back and hope our buyers.
Cool. Thank you for that. And Alex, what's your view? Do you think cold calling is obsolete at the moment? How would you
I really think it is obsolete, but I also maybe want to mirror that to let's say receiving emails or receiving other sorts of messages. If a buyer, and I think you and I have the same behavior, if we sense there's any trace of a copy paste message in there, that they just replaced your first name maybe there, but there's no value of why they are reaching out to you or what they read from you or what could be the win for you, then people haven't done their homework, and that's an email or a message to delete so very easily. And we get maybe a dozen every week at least, with people that just haven't done any homework at all, and it tells me they're lazy. It tells me they're shooting with hail, and you I think it's an hit. Yeah, you always miss then.
Sure. So if you take that to the next stage, Alex, well, how would you break down the ideal sales call?
I'm going to be a little cheeky here because I'm going to say the ideal sales call is when a customer contacts you and contacts you maybe on something they read about an innovation you brought to the market. That of course is the ideal world, but that's not always going to happen. So if I need to maybe elaborate on the homework that an account manager or a salesperson or business development person needs to do before, is to make sure that they find traces of what is in it for the potential buyer there. What kind of value can you bring to them by reading, let's say, the C-level posts from recently, because that's in the mind of, let's say, the top level within a company. Maybe you need an intro from a colleague, or that colleague is introducing your call. But I think it's also way different than from in the past, is that you don't call somebody right now, and because in my opinion it's almost rude. The times where you would call the switchboard number and ask for the person responsible for this and this, those days are gone, in my opinion. And I actually would feel embarrassed if I didn't even have the name, let alone have an insight of how we can help that person with their mission and vision. So yeah, have an intro, at least have the right context to call somebody. And I think you need to make sure your customer is ready to talk to you. So scheduling something beforehand helps a lot as well.
Yeah, we were talking before the call, and I aged myself instantly by saying I used to send faxes as well. So those days are certainly gone. Do you think, in terms of what you've just described, do you think that's an absolute minimum now that salespeople need to come to the call with, in terms of what you've described, in terms of that initial homework and preparation beforehand?
It depends, of course, on the market you're in. But I think in the transition that everybody is, let's say, solution selling at the moment, where people that are in sales are very often selling not a project, not a product, but a solution that is tailor-made, that is fitting a customer ideally. I think those are the bare, yeah, that's really the bare minimum. The products that do not require a whole lot of research, the customer is deciding who they're going to call or who they're going to buy from. They do the research themselves.
Yeah, yeah. And Julie, how would you break down an ideal call that from a salesperson to you in terms of what you'd be expecting nowadays?
Well, I think the ideal call, you have to think of it from the prospect's point of view, and it's one that adds value to them. I think we spend so much time thinking about what the sales rep wants to accomplish that we sometimes lose sight of the other half of the conversation in adding value to those prospects. I agree with Alex in that we need to understand what's important to the people we're reaching out to and trying to engage. And we talk about a concept in our prospecting programs where we say you have to become a value-added interruption. And that value is in the prospect's mind, not your mind. And I think way too many sales reps approach outreach or cold calling with, I need to tell you about my company because you're going to get excited about it just like I am, as opposed to, let me understand a little bit about your world to see if I might be able to add value to you. And I think in today's world, that value added interruption and having that mindset is really critical to a successful outreach campaign.
I love that. I love that phrase, value-added interruption. I'm gonna certainly use that one in the future, Julie.
And maybe adding on that then, Julie, is that you try to understand the impact if you were to come with those enhancements in our world. Let's say, what would it mean if you can see 20% more patients on a day? What would it mean for the patients? What would it mean for your staff? What would it mean for your hospital? Stuff like that. If you ask, let's say, first of all the pain points, but then the impact of the resolution, then you're going the right direction.
And I agree 100% on that, Alex. I think people are interested more in results than the details of your products and services, especially initially. Nobody cares what you know or what you can do until they know how much you care about them. And your job isn't to, as a salesperson doing outreach, to waste someone's time. And that's, I think, how many of us feel with some of the cold calls that we do get, is it's not relevant to our business. They don't understand what we do. I got an outreach earlier or last week, and they screwed up my name. Julie Thomas. Sure, Thomas can be a first name for a gentleman. And they approached me as Dear Thomas, didn't even know who I was. And, so you just kind of quickly dismiss those. But it's annoying when at how many people are just trying to waste our time by meeting their agenda and not having anything to do with my agenda.
Yeah, as someone with two first names, I often get that, Julie, in emails to me as well. I think interesting. I read the other day that I think 63% of salespeople are saying that cold calling is the worst part of their job. I'm surprised it's that low. I thought it'd be higher than that, to be honest. Okay, thank you for that. Moving on. We obviously in this day and age we talk in both in work and out of work, kind of context pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. So just want to move on around how the prospecting has changed and evolved since the pandemic. So Alex, if I come to you first, how do you think sales prospecting has changed since the pandemic compared to how it was previous?
I think and that's also we've seen some reports from you recently that the level of research, the number of research that people are doing, the time that people are spending, the number of posts you've seen on the platform have dramatically increased. So there's a lot of more traction online, but also the way that we expect people to schedule time with you. And I think I mentioned that just before as well, is we don't want to run into somebody's office by phone or otherwise. But we want to make sure we are scheduling the right moment for them to give us some insight on what's on their mind. So we're all back to back in meetings all day. This one is ending at 5. I have another meeting exactly at 5. And that's the way our customers also work at the moment. We're all completely back to back. So ask for the right timing from them, and then you may have their attention better than if you're calling and the answer is already no before you even started.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's people as well now balancing obviously work life, trying to find that correct work life balance as well. So if if you've scheduled a call with somebody on virtual call, it's really important that you add value to them on that call, because many people have just got those back to back calls. They're trying to balance things in and out of life as well. So you've got to make sure that they walk away from that call feeling they've got value from it as well. Absolutely.
And in those online meetings, you need to do that, let's say that social or that small talk as well, because otherwise you'd walk to
Yeah.
the coffee machine with somebody and you ask a question
Yeah.
about what you read from them. You need to bring that in your virtual meetings now as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would come before you used to sign in reception, get greeted, go for a coffee before you sat down for the meeting. Absolutely, absolutely. And Julie, how have you seen sales prospecting change since the pandemic from your side?
Well, I agree. I think that it's been interesting because I think the pandemic for many salespeople has actually improved sales productivity because they're not traveling or spending time in their car or flying around the world for a meeting here or a meeting there. So I think productivity has actually gone up. However, I think getting these meetings has become even more difficult because of what Alex just described. People are back to back and barely have time to breathe during the day. What we have found is the phone is still an effective tool, but it's what you do with the phone and what you intend to do when somebody actually answers that is powerful. And it's not to sell. It is to schedule time. As a matter of fact, we do a lot of work with clients on managing call blocks, and especially with inside sales who tend to be in maybe one of their early on in their career. They will tell us right out of the gates, the phone is dead. Nobody answers their phone. It's a waste of time to even try to call people. And we go through and do call blocks with them, and they are all shocked by, yes, people still do answer their phone, and yes, they're able to book meetings by doing that. And I think that becomes a really powerful tool at our disposal for outreach that isn't just in-mail and social and email and text for that matter. All of those in an orchestrated communication can be effective at kind of priming the memory and getting somebody ready to talk to us when they're ready to engage and have that conversation. When it comes to prospecting, the only thing we can't predict all the time is timing. We can do some research, but we also have to understand that timing is critical for our message to be receptive to the customer. So in addition to being a value-added interruption, we talk about this concept of respectful persistence. And that's not stalking somebody and sending them messages and hounding them the way some messages are. Hey, I've reached out to you 5 times. Will you, putting the burden on the buyer to, or trying to shame the buyer into responding, I just don't think is an effective strategy. It's not how you build a value-added relationship.
And do you think the expectation of the customers changed in the last couple of years, Julie?
I definitely think they do. I mean, I think the expectation has changed because how people buy changed. It used to be early on in my career, and probably for some of those of you watching this, the only way someone could learn what my company offered was to have a meeting with me. That was their research. They'd call and ask for a sales rep to come in. Well, today they can learn a lot about my company without ever talking to a sales rep, which is good and bad, right? It means that I might make it to a short list based on that research. It also means that somebody might see something on my website or a piece of content that I've shared that gives them a reason to discount me. And as a sales rep, I might not even know that I turned them off by talking about something that they didn't care about. So that's what's changed, is the buyer's more educated, and therefore the sales rep has to up their game and meet the buyer where they are.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Alex, do you think just flipping that slightly, do you think the expectation of the prospector, the salesperson, has changed as well in terms of the outreach and the calls that they make to clients?
Well, I think one of the major expectations of a sales rep, of a customer or a prospect, is that you've done your research prior to seeing the customer there. I myself have been in a sales meeting way back when maybe online was a little bit less going on. And I met with the customer and I just asked them around the coffee machine what was going on. And they said, well, you totally missed, we got acquired last week. And I felt embarrassed there because I should have done my homework way better. And that was in the news, that was online, and maybe it wasn't all in all the socials, but they expect you to be informed well, and you expect them to be understanding their agenda, and yeah, actually do all your homework there, but also just come prepared with maybe some good reference cases, and yeah, not just only sell, but also come with the right questions. And I think really what a lot of salespeople right now are missing out on is they start selling too quickly. And in my opinion, you need to be asking questions, and then the impact questions, and then maybe the what if questions, and then I think you've triggered the account, your customer enough that you can start talking about, okay, what would it mean to you if we were to resolve this?
Yeah, research absolutely key right nowadays. You just can't go on those calls. You can't, if you're not prepared, you're just not going to get the outcome you want.
No.
Absolutely.
I've always learned, all the salespeople in here, if you are going on a face-to-face meeting with your customer and you're walking up to somebody's office and you talk about the weather or the traffic, you haven't done your homework. So make sure you talk about what you read from their C-levels recently, or how you read them in the news recently, or what kind of hobbies did you find, or what kind of mutual contacts you did find. Then you're having a lively conversation.
Yeah, I'm just curious, do you think reps, salespeople are preparing more now for the kind of online virtual call than they would have done for the face-to-face meeting, or preparing differently?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think there are some reps that don't know what to research, so they spend too much time focusing on information that might not be as relevant, and then that becomes an excuse that they feel like they're never ready to do the outreach. So I think the key is helping the rep know where are some key pieces of data that you can understand and internalize in order to be best prepared for that. LinkedIn is certainly one of those great resources, looking at the insights, looking at some of the information that you provide in that. And that's become a valuable resource on both people and companies to quickly get that snapshot and then understand the context for your outreach. I also think there are some people that have learned that virtual sales calls can be just as effective as in person. And I think prior to March of 2020, there were probably organizations that sold enterprise solutions, really big ticket items, that would have told you there's no way I can sell a $500,000 deal or $1 million deal over the phone. I have to be there in person. I have to build that relationship. And I think we've learned that no, we can be effective virtually. We can build deep relationships. We can add value. We can create and advance opportunities in spite of the fact that we are not in a room together or breaking bread together and having a meal to deepen that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, certainly for me, the vast majority of my client interactions are still online at the moment. I've probably had a couple of face-to-face. I don't know if that's different for either of you two, but that's certainly that isn't changing quickly at the moment. That's going to be a very gradual thing. Okay, Alex. So in terms of segueing in terms of like the kind of technology available for the sellers. So what signals do you think sellers can look out for that's going to better inform their outreach? So what kinds of research is it? Job changes, is it promotions, etc., etc.? What sort of things do you think sellers should be looking out for?
I think definitely you should use the job changes, or you should use the promotions by just congratulating a person and knowing you're out there if they wish to talk to you at some point. Not pushing that, not selling still, but also maybe you want to ask questions on things you see but are not very clearly out there. And let me give you an example there. If you see a hospital, for instance, we of course are in healthcare. If you see a hospital that has so many job openings in, let's say, X-ray stuff, then they clearly have a challenge in having the work done with the people that they currently have, or they are expanding. So talking about productivity there may enhance their performance. So maybe asking questions about what you see, but what it's not out in the open, is helping. Definitely, stakeholder posts help a lot. If you see somebody posting that you're talking to before or during an opportunity, ask that questions. Maybe not under the post itself, but maybe in an email, or maybe in a connection request, or maybe in a message if you are connected to them or have their email, or pick up the phone and ask those questions, because they've put something on social. So it's totally okay to respond to that. And that's one thing that I think most of our salespeople are a little bit scary of, maybe to reach out to people, but they started a conversation online. So it's, in my opinion, perfectly fine to respond to that. But also, I think that one of the other things that you should definitely use as a sales rep, and that's where following a person or using Sales Navigator and saving a lead there and following the person, is making sure that you are aware of what's happening on the C-level level. Making sure what's on the mind of the hospital, what kind of plans are they building, and you can elaborate on that when you're speaking to a head of a department there. So definitely the things that are on the mind of the C-suite are also in the mind of, let's say, your department heads that you want to be influencing.
Absolutely, yeah. We talk a lot here about being multi-threaded into a client, so making sure you've got kind of multiple points of contact.
Yep.
Julie, kind of same question to you, really. What signals do you think sellers should be looking out for in terms of, just in terms of improving their outreach? Anything that maybe Alex hasn't touched on yet?
Yeah, I agree with Alex in that I think change is often a trigger for evaluating different things. So people in new roles, organizations that might be merging, growing. I think the job openings can be a clue as to what might be going on, and understanding that. But I also think it's important to look at the engagement level for some of the content that you're sharing. Again, I think that the best outreach is this kind of omni-channel focus on adding value through content, and using various platforms today. You can start to see, did they open it? Did they forward it? Did they download something? And then following up for those individuals that are engaged with your content is one way to kind of warm up that cold outreach. And we've had tremendous success with monitoring that engagement level with our messaging and our outreach, and then using that to target who we're going to actually pick up the phone and try to get that next level contact with in order to have a conversation. And then I agree 100% with Alex. It is not showing up and throwing up in that first meeting. It is coming prepared to engage with questions that are thought-provoking and create a mutual understanding of what the need might be and how you might be able to partner with that organization.
Absolutely, and I think we're saying cold calling still has a place. It might not be as effective as it once was, What other tools and technologies or techniques, Julie, do you think salespeople can rely on in terms of outreach?
Well, one of the things that we hear again and again from our clients and our reps is that people give up way too quickly. We know it takes a lot of contact, value added contacts for someone to ultimately respond. And so I think it's leveraging technology today that helps you be consistent with your outreach and really thinking through if I'm calling on Alex and Alex is in charge of social selling, what would be the typical issues that he might be interested in given his industry, given his position, and how can I flex that message to be relevant to you? And it's never going to be 100% if I haven't met with Alex, but the more thought I put into it, the higher the likelihood I'm going to get something in his in-mail or his inbox or on his voicemail that resonates and creates enough of a hook to say, hey, I want to learn more and I want to have that conversation. And then that conversation isn't to sell. It is to build relationship, establish trust, and start to explore whether or not we could be a fit for you and your firm.
Yeah, absolutely. Clients often talk about having that trusted advisor relationship and not being sold to on day one. Alex, what about yourself in terms of like tools and technologies that you think are more effective in this space at the moment?
I would definitely use the warm introductions that are available, both online and offline. We, as of course, as Philips, we know people in every single hospital, in every government organization that is about healthcare. So make sure you use those warm introductions and ask your colleagues about who to speak to, or what is this kind, what kind of a person is this, or what is triggering them, or have you met with them recently, and could you introduce me there, or when are you going to see them again, and can I join you? Even though if you're in a totally different business line, it could really still only add value if you use the warm introductions there. In terms of technology, because that is not really technology yet, that is just purely the old-fashioned offline network. I think using the ability to respond on people's content. If you ask a relevant question there, I think you're 90% sure of an answer. If you send out a connection request with a question referring to what somebody recently posted, I think then you're also very likely getting a response, and it should not be too tricky. It should not be too tricky that your next message is really selling there, and actually echoing what you just said. People don't want to be sold to. People want to be partnering with you. So the word sales, maybe shouldn't also appear very quickly on your profile, because it may give people an itch if they see the word sales there. They don't want to be sold to. Our sales reps are healthcare partners. They're helping our customers innovate. They're helping patient outcomes, and I'd rather speak about those kind of topics than using the word sales, which will very easily close doors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, if I get connection requests, I'm looking for someone to tell me why they're reaching out. It doesn't have to be anything particularly fancy. Just really clear in terms of why they're reaching out. I think that's really key. And then Julie, what do you see as what do you think are some of the bad behaviours, if you like, that salespeople should look out for in terms of how they're reaching out to clients, and how could they improve in that area, do you think?
Well, I think there's a couple things. And first off, starting on the technology. Technology is great to amplify and accelerate and help us. But I'm seeing more and more I think are AI bots gone bad, like just ridiculous messages that just don't seem to make sense, whether it's in mail or other ways of outreach. And I just can't believe that it's a person. So I think we have to be careful with technology. I think some of the behaviors that I find really annoying to me as a buyer when I'm in that buying mode is the sales rep, or whatever their title is, that is not interested in understanding my point of view, but is more interested in just making sure I hear their message. And it's not a conversation. It is truly the pitch. It doesn't matter what you have to say, Julie. I'm here with my agenda, and this is what I want to share with you. And I find those types of meetings to be a waste of my time. And those types of that attitude, if you will, of that salesperson is not somebody that I want to invest any further time with or partner with. And in my experience, people, when you engage prospects, people will spend their time with you before they will spend their money with you. So that is where this respectful, value-added partnership starts to get created. If I can't get them to spend any time with me, I'm going to be hard pressed to get them to open up their wallet and spend $1 with me. And I think people just need to, relationships take time. You don't, just as you shouldn't ask somebody to marry you on your first date, you probably shouldn't ask somebody to buy from you in the first introductory call.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting because technology can help get you access to the clients, but that doesn't give you an excuse for sending a badly worded or put together email or outreach, right? You've got to, that technology gets you to a certain place, but you've still got to make sure that what you're sending adds real value or piques their interest. In the first place, you can't be lazy in terms of what you're sending across just because you've got the technology to reach out, for sure. Alex, what pitfalls do you see in this space, and again, kind of areas for improvement for salespeople?
For salespeople, one thing that I do see that we have, of course, some older-fashioned people, salespeople in our organization that start using, for instance, LinkedIn or start using any other tool and expect miracles straight away. So maybe they even expect their sales force to go crazy in their funnel, but it's a way to success. In my opinion. So you should be telling your platforms, as LinkedIn, for instance, what are the things that you like and which network are you posting to. So doing an exercise just once isn't going to do magic. Updating your profile alone isn't going to go crazy. But make sure you make it a habit. You make it your way of working, that you are using, let's say, the social listening there properly and interact with that content, so the network is getting stronger and is the belief of that and the understanding, is becoming stronger of what is the content that you need. And with that, my bottom line there really is that it takes time. Don't expect a miracle to happen the first day. And even if you are finally starting to have a conversation with the person, in that second message, please stay away from selling still. We see it so often. Somebody's sending you a very good connection request and you respond, and then we have a new platform and you should want to buy it. That's really clearly a no-go, and you go out of my network straight away again. A missed opportunity there. So those are pitfalls that we see. I see also with stuff coming in my inbox, but also what I see within our markets.
Absolutely. We've got time for probably one or two more questions before we wrap up. I'm curious in terms of how, just around the whole data piece. So there's so much information out there that you can find on clients and buyers. Julie, just interested, any kind of recommendations around how people can sift through that data and not bombard a client with 100 different things, and how you choose maybe the one or two things that's going to kind of pique their interest initially. Any thoughts around that?
Well, I think it's really critical for sales reps and organizations that are leveraging this data to have a very clear picture of who their ideal customer is, and then filter around that. Data is everywhere, and turning it into actionable data, I think, is the challenge that many of us have. So we identify the couple of characteristics for those ideal customers that we want to target, and we use that to filter the data to start to get that more refined list that we can then go and start to target. And by target, I mean start to do some additional research to confirm what we think the data is telling us, and then plan out what that what we call them cadences, what our outreach cadence will be to that group of people or those individuals that we want to reach out to. And then I think, building on what Alex just said, consistency is more important than intensity. And these things, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not one and done. It's not just, it's one great outreach and everybody's going to respond to that. It's consistency and continually learning which of those messages are getting higher engagement. How do I do more like that? What pieces of content are people looking at that create kind of the hook for them to want to learn more? And it's this constant refinement. And some of it's done systemically, and some of it's done at the rep level based on their knowledge of their territory and the accounts they're calling on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alex, from yourself, how do you like to receive data when people are sending it to you? Because there's a temptation to kind of bombard buyers and clients with data. What's your kind of view around that?
Well, I think as any other customer, I'd like to really see that it's for me. If data is really lively to me, if results are very lively to me, then they make sense. And I think one other example I was going to bring on is that where we see the most traction of, let's say, our content that we are sharing on LinkedIn in this particular example, is where people are telling their own stories. And their own stories with topics that they have touched, or innovations they have done, or deals they have done, impacted customers they have worked on, and then posting it on that with their own personal context. Those make the biggest difference to us. And I think what very many salespeople are failing is to write those success stories up. They tell their family at dinner in the evening what they've achieved. They tell their sales team in sales meetings what they've achieved. But they could also be telling those clinical, in our case, those clinical results to the outside world as well. Because other hospitals may be connected to the people that you are posting about, and they may be looking for the same outcomes. And you have really those lively examples, so close by. And that's one thing that a lot of people forget. Keep it human, keep it personal, keep it close to yourself as well. We are people, we're selling to people, and we want to help each other. That's maybe the one thing that I'd like to bring as an extra idea.
Great, thanks, Alex. I'll come to Julie and yourself in a second, just for some closing thoughts before we close out the call. I found a really great quote that I'm going to read out, and I'm going to read it off the page to make sure I do it justice. But I think it kind of nicely sums up the conversation we've had today. So it's from Sahil Mansouri, who's the CRO at Bravado. And Sahil says, what separates top performing sellers is their commitment to research, which turns cold calls into warm conversations. Top performing sellers measure twice, they cut once, they research the industry, learn about competitors, understand trends, and act as thought leaders in their space versus pounding the phones and spamming emails. I really like that quote. I think it encapsulates a lot of what we've discussed today. Julie, I'll come to you. Any kind of closing thoughts and comments you'd like to leave us with as we kind of wrap up the session?
No, I love that quote. I think the sales reps that are really good at this figure out the research component of it, what to look at, and then focus on becoming that value-added interruption with respectful persistence, not stalking, not shaming, not bullying somebody into a meeting, but providing reasons for the target or the prospect to want to engage, to learn more. And I think that's really understanding how you flip the script to be about the prospect and not about you is the critical reason that research is so important. So Thank you for the opportunity. This has been a really fun
Yeah,
conversation.
thank you. I love that respectful persistence. I'm certainly gonna steal that and use that. Thank you. Alex, any closing thoughts from yourself?
I think I very, very much agree on the closing remarks of Julie there. And maybe adding one part is that doing the wrong ice cold outreach there is also harming your brand. So if you've done that once, people just may remember your name or your company's name. And maybe that second better message is also going to be neglected. So make sure that that first impression, it's like we talked about online dating before. It's the first impression is because there's no second chance there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, Julie, Alex, thank you so much for your time today. Really, really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much. That's all we have time for today. Just a huge thank you for everyone who's tuned in, to Alex and Julie for their insights. Thank you, and everyone in the background who's made the event possible today. There will be a recording of the episode immediately available on LinkedIn Sales Solution page, and you can continue the conversation on LinkedIn, #LiveWithSalesLeaders. Thank you to everyone who left us a question. We're sorry we didn't get to yours, but feel free to get in touch with us on the chat or the social channels. And I hope to see you again on our next edition of Live with Sales Leaders. Thank you so much.
Thank you.